Have you ever noticed how some people just disappear? I'm not talking about physically disappearing. I'm talking about those souls who begin to drift away without explanation, who stare into space with eyes full of presence, but who are no longer here. It's as if they've been touched by something invisible, as if a silent call has pulled them somewhere else. And now, they are leaving, one by one, in silence. And maybe you are among them. Stay until the end. You will understand why certain souls are being taken. And if deep down this is happening to you too, leave the keyword in the comments. I feel the calling. Let's see how many of us can still perceive the invisible. Some people are no longer here, and no one notices. They walk the streets, sit beside you, smile kindly, but their eyes no longer shine with the same sparkle. It's not sadness. It's a deep, silent, almost sacred absence. Their souls no longer respond to the stimuli of the ordinary world. It's as if something has shut down inside, something that doesn't hurt but transforms. They are quiet, yes, but it's not apathy. It's surrender. It's the body still present, and the soul already on a journey. This process begins subtly. First comes the feeling of tiredness, but not physical. It's an existential exhaustion, as if everything that once seemed meaningful now seems shallow. Places lose their luster. Conversations lose their flavor. Bonds dissolve naturally. It's not about drama. It's about liberation. The soul begins to detach itself from what is inessential, without fanfare, without an audience, just a silent step out of a reality that no longer sustains it. There's a specific, though indefinable moment when a person realizes they're different. It's not that they're feeling strange. It's more like they've become a foreigner in their own home, in their own body, in their own routine. Everything that once occupied space and importance dissolves, and they don't fight it. They observe, they accept, and little by little, they understand. They're being called. Something, somewhere unnamed, is waiting for them. It's at this stage that silence begins to become a shelter. The presence of others begins to suffocate, and the noise of the world becomes too much to bear. She turns inward, not as an escape, but as a way to reconnect. She discovers that there are doors that only open when one is alone, and in this retreat, something subtle begins to happen. She begins to remember, not memories of this life, but old sensations, unexplained knowledge, a longing that has no origin. It's the call taking shape. This is the true beginning of the crossing. There are no external rituals. There are no lights in the sky, no visible angels. There is only a growing emptiness outside, and a silent fullness arising within. The person still lives, works, smiles, but something within them no longer responds to the world in the same way. They are not becoming someone new. They are returning to who they always were. And this return begins with a departure, the departure of everything that no longer vibrates at the same frequency as their soul. While the world moves on, distracted by noise, goals, and appearances, some souls have already begun to depart. And the most striking thing is that this departure happens invisibly. There are no tears. There are no goodbyes. They simply drift away, one by one, in silence. Friends think it's a phase. Family thinks it's isolation. But what's happening is much deeper than anyone can grasp with the eyes of the flesh. They are being taken, and those who observe closely feel it. These people don't cause a scene. They don't demand attention. On the contrary, they become even calmer, more restrained, more serene. But this serenity has a mysterious undertone, as if they've understood something others haven't yet. It's a kind of peace that comes not from comfort, but from acceptance. They no longer try to belong. They no longer try to convince anyone of anything. They simply exist, lightly, as if passing through, and indeed they do. Those who live with these souls sense that something has changed, but they can't quite put their finger on it. Sometimes they miss them even in their presence. It's as if they've already left, even though they're sitting in the same room. And this felt absence is real, because the soul is no longer fully here. There's a part of it that's been summoned, a part that's already moving toward an invisible, silent, but profoundly real destiny. The curious thing is that many of these souls also don't know what's happening. They can't explain why everything has lost its luster, why old plans no longer make sense, why the world's rush seems absurd now. They just feel it. They sense they're in transition, and even without understanding, they surrender. Their intuition grows stronger, synchronicities increase, the outer world merges with the inner, and then they stop fighting, and they start listening. These souls are leaving, yes, but not as an escape, but as a response. They no longer belong to what is here because what is here no longer nourishes them. They are being taken not away, but inward, to a place that pulses at a different frequency. And if you've ever felt the absence of someone very present, perhaps you've lived with one of these souls. And perhaps if you recognize yourself in these words, it's because you too have begun to leave, even without knowing it. No one hears this call with their ears. It doesn't come with words, it doesn't come with signs that others can point to. It comes as a different, almost sacred silence, a kind of emptiness that doesn't frighten, but attracts. A pause in time that forces you to stop everything and listen to what cannot be said. The world continues to call urgently, demanding attention, but those who have already begun to feel the call simply can no longer answer, because within them, another voice has already begun to whisper. This voice is internal but not mental. It's not logical, it doesn't argue, it doesn't explain, it just touches. It touches the soul like a forgotten memory, as if something inside you says, "You remember, don't you?" Even if you don't know exactly what. It's at this point that the body is still here, living normally, but the spirit begins to move. It begins to ask questions that cannot be answered with reason, only with surrender. And those who resist suffer. Because the call doesn't go away, it intensifies. Many try to stifle this with distractions. They return to commitments, force smiles, lose themselves in momentary pleasures. But none of this satisfies for long, because what is being called is deeper than any external fulfillment can reach. It is the core of the soul being summoned. And no matter how much the mind tries to stifle it, there comes a time when it is no longer possible to pretend nothing is happening. The call becomes silence, and silence becomes a path. It is in silence that answers arrive, not as sentences, but as sensations, like a peace that blossoms amidst chaos, like an illogical certainty, and whoever listens is never the same again, not because they were convinced, but because they were touched. And once touched, it's impossible to remain where everything vibrates in noise. Silence becomes shelter, and the noisy world begins to seem strange, heavy, out of place. It's as if the tone of existence has changed, and only you perceive the change. If you've been seeking silence without knowing why, if you've been turning away from the noise without planning, if you've preferred the company of your own soul over the applause of others, perhaps you're already hearing the call. Perhaps you've begun, even without understanding, to walk the path of those being led, not with fear, but with confidence, because the soul recognizes what is its own, even when the eyes cannot yet see. This crossing is not available to everyone, not because it's a privilege, but because it demands lightness, and many are still too heavy to be carried. Weighed down by hurts they refuse to let go, stories they refuse to close, egos that insist on being right. The soul cannot ascend if it is still anchored to the ground by invisible chains, and these chains are always internal. They are stored pain, accumulated guilt, attachments that fuel fear. Those being taken began first of all to let go. They let go of people who no longer fit. They let go of ideas that imprisoned them. They let go of the need to be accepted, recognized, loved the way the world understands love. And the more they let go, the lighter they became. And the lighter they became, the more they could hear the call, until there came a point where it no longer made sense to fight it, just to follow. Because the path revealed itself not in effort, but in detachment. Some will say it's weakness, that it's giving up, but it's not. It's the courage to stop clinging to what's sinking. It's the maturity to realize that some battles only serve to keep the soul trapped in circles. And those who are leaving have already understood this. They don't run away. They free themselves, and that's why they're being carried away, because they no longer belong to the density of what imprisoned them. They no longer vibrate with fear, with contention, with vanity. They vibrate with surrender. This selection isn't made by merit nor by religion. It's made by vibration, by the silent purity of those who have cleared what needed clearing. And this often only comes after pain, after loss, after collapse. The soul goes through a process of emptying, and it is in this emptying that it finds space for the new, for the true, for the invisible, for that which cannot be spoken, only felt. If you feel like you've been letting a lot out lately, if people say that you have changed, that you are more distant, quieter, if everything that once weighed heavily now seems unimportant, you might be ready. You may already be light enough to be carried, Many confuse this process with an end, with loss, with a definitive rupture, but it isn't. What's happening to these souls isn't a literal death. It's a transition of internal dimensions. The body remains here, breathing, walking, smiling, but the consciousness no longer inhabits the same places as before. It's as if the heart begins to beat in a different rhythm, outside the time of the world, a more subtle, cleaner, more real frequency. Those being taken don't abandon life but begin to live it in a completely different way. It's a new way of seeing, of relating, of being. What was once urgent now seems irrelevant. What was once an obligation is now a choice. What was once a struggle is now compassion. They don't become saints nor unattainable. They remain human, but profoundly human. Humans who walk with one foot here and the other in the invisible. They don't need to announce that they've changed. Just being close is enough to feel it. Their words are lighter. Their gestures are more precise. Their presence carries something that can't be explained, but transforms. And even if they don't talk about it, their souls are already at a different point on their journey. They no longer fight to prove their worth, to win small battles. They live simply, but with purpose. Every look, every silence, every choice has intention. This new way of living is silent, and that's why it's so misunderstood. Many think it's apathy, coldness, and detachment, but it's exactly the opposite. It's a way of living so connected to the essential that the superficial no longer finds space. It's as if the world has become too small for those who have already begun to touch the immensity within. There's no pretense in this. There's humility. The humility of someone who knows they're merely remembering what they've always been. If you feel alive, but different, that your body is still here, but your spirit seems to contemplate something beyond. If you look at the same things but through the eyes of another time. If everything seems the same, but nothing vibrates the way it used to. So fear not. You are not dying. You are being born again, from the inside. Some souls being taken have begun to notice something very subtle, yet profoundly transformative. Sleep is no longer the same. It's gone from being merely a moment of physical rest to a portal, a silent bridge between worlds. They lie down as they always have, but when they close their eyes, they feel something happen. The body rests, but the soul awakens. There are nights when the heart races for no reason. Others, when such vivid dreams invade with force, leaving marks on the chest at dawn. Places never visited in this life, but which feel all too familiar. Unknown people, whom the soul recognizes. Codes, symbols, voices, glances. Everything whispers, you are coming back. During these silent nights while the world sleeps, these souls are being trained, guided, aligned. It is when the ego is silenced that the soul has space to move freely. And it does. It goes to places the body cannot reach. It encounters beings that don't fit into the logic of everyday life. It receives information that isn't logical, but is real. And even if the mind doesn't remember everything, the heart feels it. Upon awakening, something has changed. An unnamed emotion, a heightened intuition, a premonition that asserts itself. And as time passes, these nights become increasingly intense, until sleep becomes an extension of the journey, no longer a pause. These souls begin to sleep less, but feel more. They often wake up in the middle of the night with a strange certainty that they've been somewhere else. And they have. Many begin to record dreams. Others simply observe their sensations. What matters is not understanding everything clearly, but perceiving what is changing within. Sleep cycles accompany this internal transition. And when the soul is being prepared, rest takes on a new function. It's no longer about recovering energy. It's about transporting consciousness. This new sleep pattern isn't easy. It demands surrender. It demands listening. It demands attention to the invisible. Because as the soul detaches itself from the density of the world, it connects with what is above. And this connection often happens when the world is silent. While everyone sleeps, those being taken are being awakened from within. What was night becomes light. What was rest becomes awakening. And in time, sleep becomes the most sacred of passages. It's not about insomnia. It's about revelation. Sleep doesn't fail. It changes. And it changes because you've changed. Because the soul that no longer belongs to this world doesn't rest as it once did. It travels. It rediscovers. It prepares itself. And returns every day with another piece of truth in its heart. One of the first distortions those being led begin to notice is the strange behavior of time. It simply stops obeying the old rules. The minutes no longer pass the same way. The days seem sometimes eternal, sometimes fleeting. The clock continues to tick. But those who have begun to leave density realize they no longer live in other people's time. It's as if external time no longer has control over internal time. What once caused haste now causes boredom. What was once called routine is now noise. The soul begins to move at slower, more subtle, more conscious rhythms, and the world, with all its hustle and bustle, begins to seem like an uncoordinated theater. In this new rhythm, everything is organized differently. The soul begins to see quality, not quantity. A genuine conversation is worth more than dozens of empty interactions. A moment of contemplation replaces hours of rushing. Time, which was once synonymous with productivity, becomes sacred space. People no longer chase anything. They sense the right moment for each thing. And the most beautiful thing is that, by letting go of control, they begin to live in sync with something greater. Coincidences become frequent. Answers arrive at the right time. Encounters happen with purpose. It's not magic, it's alignment. It's the soul entering the time of creation. This frightens those still trapped in linear time. Outsiders think they're wasting time, unproductive, disconnected, and distracted. But inside, there's a serene lucidity, a deep knowing that life has its own cycles, and that forcing time is moving away from the truth. The soul learns to wait without anxiety, to act without haste, to listen to the time that can't be measured by a clock. And in this new time, everything is lighter. Even the weight of the past begins to fade, because internal time doesn't carry old guilt. It simply flows. Those being led learn that time is not a scarce resource. It is frequency. And those who vibrate at a different frequency live in another time, the time of the soul, the time of truth, the time felt, not counted. And so these people seem to live in another reality. They are punctual with the essentials but indifferent to the demands of chaos. They respect their limits. They value the moment. They perceive the instant as the miracle it is. And so, even if they go unnoticed by hurried eyes, they are exactly where they should be. When time starts to slow down inside you, when the clock no longer dictates the rhythm of your steps, it's because something bigger is driving you. And maybe you're already crossing it too. Almost always before the crossing comes pain, but not the kind of pain that destroys. It's a pain that reveals. It arrives without asking permission, opening deep cracks in the soul and exposing everything that was still hidden. It's not punishment nor bad luck. It's a silent call from the soul for everything that no longer serves to be uprooted. And most of the time, only then can we let go of what we held on to out of fear, the person we didn't know how to let go of, the life that no longer fit us, the version of ourselves that became too heavy to carry. Pain arrives as a messenger. It doesn't want to punish you. It wants to prepare you. At first, the suffering seems unfair. The losses are profound. The disappointments are sharp. The ground opens up beneath your feet. But as time passes, something curious happens. The outer layers begin to fall away, and what remains is the essence. It is in the midst of pain that the soul begins to remember what it is. Far from the masks, far from the distractions, far from the noise of the world. Pain takes you to a place where all is silence, and it is there that you hear for the first time what you truly came here to do. It breaks you not to diminish you, but to strip away the excess, to leave only what is necessary. Those being taken have already passed through this portal, and if you look closely, you'll see it in their eyes. It's not sadness, it's depth. They were hurt, they were tested, and they survived. But they didn't return the same. They returned more whole. Because pain, when bravely crossed, doesn't harden you. It makes you true. Those who have been broken inside and rebuilt themselves from the soul understand the value of every tear. And that's why these people speak little, but say a lot. They walk slowly but know exactly where they're going. Pain was the final key, and it only surrenders to those who accept the journey, to those who surrender, to those who stop fighting it and decide to walk with it, even without understanding their destination. And it's at that moment that the universe begins to rearrange everything. The right people appear, the right doors open, intuition ignites, because now you're clean, you're ready, you're aligned. Pain brought you this far, and now it's time to let it go, because what needed to be burned has already turned to ash. Don't be afraid if life has taken you to the bottom. Sometimes the bottom is just the exact point where rebirth begins. And those being taken are precisely those who decided to be reborn, even in pieces, even without guarantees, even in the dark. They said yes, and that's why they're going, even after they're gone, or rather, even after they begin to be taken. These souls don't disappear completely. They remain here, but in a different state. They leave traces wherever they go, a silent mark that never fades. Whoever crosses paths with one of these souls never forgets, because they don't speak with their mouths. They speak with their presence, with their gaze, with silence. They have an aura that soothes, a gesture that heals, a listening ear that welcomes. Even if they're silent, their vibration touches deep places. And when they leave a longing, not for what they said, but for what they awakened. These souls have a mission they can't always explain. They simply feel a need to be in certain places, meet certain people, say certain words. Sometimes they stay only a short time. Sometimes they never return, but they always leave something behind. A different memory, a phrase that won't leave the mind, a gesture that changes the way someone sees themselves. They are like seeds of light scattered on fertile soil. They don't force transformation but provoke change simply by existing. Those who encounter them feel that something has changed after that encounter, even if you don't understand what. It's as if time has stopped for a few seconds and a kind of higher presence has manifested itself through that gaze. These souls are no better than anyone else. They are simply cleaner, more open, more available for the invisible to use them as a channel. And that's why they leave so much behind. Because they hold nothing back, they simply pass on. And as they pass on, they illuminate. They don't seek to be remembered. They don't want statues, nor recognition. On the contrary, many of these souls prefer anonymity, simplicity, and seclusion. But it doesn't matter, because those who touch the souls of others are never forgotten. Their energy remains in the environment, in their words, in their memories. Even when their bodies are gone, even when the bond is broken, it's as if a piece of them remains where it was needed, to remember, to inspire, to protect. And perhaps you've already been touched by one of these souls. Perhaps at some point in your life, someone silently crossed your path and left a trail they've never erased. Or perhaps, right now, you're the one leaving that trail, and you haven't even realized it yet. Many of these souls have already left, and no one has noticed. They are around us, but they no longer belong to this plane in the same way. They continue to exist, but in a different state of presence. They are here, but they are not. They participate in conversations, but with a distant look. They are at gatherings, but with their hearts elsewhere. Those who live alongside them may believe it is just introspection, fatigue, distance, but it is not. It is transition. It is the soul operating on a different frequency, gradually disconnecting from what no longer makes sense. These people made no promises. They gave no obvious signs. They didn't say they were leaving, but their gaze changed. Their touch changed. The way they moved in the world changed. They stopped chasing. They stopped trying to convince, to justify themselves, to please. Their connection to the superficial began to dissolve. They became selective with their words, their silences, their energy. And even though no one noticed the exact time of their departure, they had already been leaving for a long time, in silence. Maybe it's that friend who drifted away, that relative who became quieter, that colleague who moved to another city, or simply that person you love to talk to who suddenly withdrew. There was no fight, no hurt, just an invisible distance. And this distance has a name, a call. These souls heeded what many ignore. They listened, they were touched, and from then on they began moving toward what cannot be seen. They began to be drawn, even if from within. The most beautiful, and at the same time most enigmatic thing, is that these souls never announce their departure, because they don't need to. Those who see, feel. Those who feel, understand. It's not a painful absence. It's a sacred absence, a kind of presence that remains even when the body is no longer near, because they leave traces, they leave lessons, they leave sensations, and these fragments remain with us as signs that something greater is happening, even if the world doesn't yet know how to name it. And perhaps, right now, you're remembering someone like that. Someone who left in a way you didn't understand at the time. Someone who didn't say goodbye with words, but with their soul. Someone who left a void that doesn't hurt, but speaks. This someone wasn't lost. They simply answered the call first. And perhaps if you feel this memory vibrating within you now, It's because you're beginning to hear the same call. You don't need grandiose signs to know you're being led. In fact, the true signs are silent, almost invisible, but the soul recognizes them. It all begins with the feeling that you're at odds with the world, as if the noises bother you more than before, as if time were moving too fast, people too superficial, goals too empty, and then you start to become silent. You start to avoid certain places. You start to prefer the wind, the water, soft music, the smell of old books, the sound of your own breathing, and you don't even understand why. You just feel it. Restlessness also appears. Not ordinary anxiety, but an internal discomfort with everything that once was. What once enchanted you no longer enchants. What held you captive no longer holds you. You feel different, without knowing exactly when you changed. Places no longer belong to you. Clothes no longer seem to fit your new skin. The words that once flowed now seem unnecessary, and no matter how hard you try to force yourself back to how you were before, it's no longer possible, because you're not becoming someone new. You're letting who you've always been emerge. Another sign is sensitivity. Sounds that once went unnoticed now affect you. The pain of others reaches you more powerfully. Animals seem to perceive you differently. Plants look at you as if they know something. You cry more easily. And it's not weakness, it's cleansing. It's your soul gaining ground, taking command, letting go of the barriers built to survive in a world that no longer serves you. It's the sacred opening within you, without fanfare, without spectacle. You also begin to remember things you've never experienced. Old dreams become clearer. Coincidences become too frequent to ignore. Strangers say things that touch a deep chord within you. It's as if the universe is constantly whispering, "You're coming back." And even without understanding everything, you sense something is happening. Something irreversible. Something greater than any plan your mind has ever created. It's the invisible taking shape within your reality. And when all this starts to happen, the only thing you need to do is allow. Allow the old to go. Allow the pain to purify. Allow the silence to teach you. Allow your soul to guide you. Because in the end, it's not about fighting the world. It's about returning home. And the souls being taken are precisely those who have already begun to walk this sacred return. Not everyone is ready to go. Many still don't listen, don't feel, don't perceive. They remain trapped in the rhythm of the world, in the urgencies of matter, in the narratives of the mind. And that's okay. Every soul has its time. But something curious happens. Even those who don't understand, feel. Even those who don't see, perceive. Those who remain begin to notice that there's something different about the person who's silently leaving. They feel a kind of separation that isn't physical, a change that isn't visible, a distance that can't be measured in meters. And even without understanding, they feel longing, an anticipated longing, a longing for something that's still there, but no longer. This misunderstanding is natural. How can we explain that someone has changed from the inside out? That they no longer vibrate at the same frequency? That they're no longer interested in the same conversations, the same concerns, the same conflicts? Those who remain try to bring back that old you, but it's too late. That version is gone. What remains now is someone more present, deeper, more silent. And this frightens those who still live on the surface, because depth always confronts what we avoid feeling. Many of these awakening souls end up being misunderstood, called cold, distant, strange, even selfish. But it's not selfishness, it's protection. It's not coldness, it's cleansing. They need silence, they need space, they need seclusion to traverse what no one sees. They are in a process of internal dissolution, leaving behind ancestral pains, old patterns, invisible burdens. And there's no way to explain this to those who haven't yet begun their own journey back. So they simply withdraw, not out of resentment but out of respect, and they move on. Those who remain miss them, even if their presence lingers. And in some cases, this absence also awakens them, because the absence of those who are already gone leaves an echo, a call that little by little begins to be heard in the hearts that still sleep. Sometimes, the silence of those who left is the push those who stayed needed to look within. Absence becomes a mirror, change becomes a seed, and without realizing it, another soul begins to be touched. And so the process spreads in one by one, silently. Not everyone goes together, not everyone goes now, but everyone, at some point, will be called. And those who have already begun to leave don't look back with longing, they look back with compassion. because they know how much it hurts to stay, and they know how liberating it is to leave, so they don't force themselves. They just walk, and they trust that when the time is right, the soul still sleeping will also awaken. The truth is, no one is truly leaving. What feels like a departure is, in essence, a return, a silent return to what has always been within us. The process of being taken is not about disappearing, but about remembering the origin, the purpose, the essence we were taught to forget. When the soul begins to be taken, it is not fleeing the world. It is rediscovering its invisible home. It is returning to the exact point where it all began, where love does not need to be earned, where peace does not depend on conditions, where being simply is. This return has no address. It has no form, but it has presence. It happens when the noise dies down, when the anxiety fades, when the need to win, to prove, to convince, disappears. It's when we look within and finally feel at home, even if everything remains the same on the outside. The soul recognizes the sacred place within the chest and understands it was here all along, and all the paths, all the pain, all the losses existed only to bring us back to this point. Those being taken feel this return before they even understand it. It's a longing that has no name, a memory that doesn't belong to this life, a constant feeling that something greater is waiting on the other side of the curtain. And the more one allows one to feel, the thinner the veil becomes. The closer the spiritual world gets, the more the body becomes merely a vehicle, and the soul, the true guide. The return happens in silence, without spectacle, because the sacred doesn't need to attract attention. It simply calls, and whoever hears, goes. In the end, we will all return, all of us. There is no rush, there is no punishment, only invitations. And in these times we live in, these invitations are becoming more frequent. Souls are being called one by one. Age, history, or appearance don't matter. What matters is inner readiness, an open heart, enough lightness to cross over. What seems like a goodbye is merely a reunion with what is eternal. And those who have already begun to listen know there is nothing to fear, because the return is home. And if you felt this video spoke directly to you, maybe it's no coincidence. Maybe this is your calling. Maybe this is your time. There's no need to force anything. Just listen. Notice what's changing. Withdraw if necessary. Allow yourself to be silent because the journey is internal, and all you need now is to trust.